Mark Davis is a successful businessman who has built a large media company and become one of the most influential people in the industry. Despite his busy schedule and frequent meetings, Mark has always managed to maintain a balance in his life. One afternoon, after finishing an important meeting in the city, he decided to drive home. He took a shortcut through a small town called Mangrove to save time. However, he did not expect that this trip would change his life. On a deserted road, Mark's BMW was suddenly stopped by a patrol car. Officers Harris and Beckett got out and asked Mark to show his papers. When Mark asked why he was stopped, the officers said that his car had been pulled over for a traffic violation. One of the officers circled the car, and when they returned, they asked him to open the trunk for inspection. Mark, although a little surprised, complied. However, when the police opened the trunk, they discovered a small package containing illegal substances. Mark immediately protested, claiming that this was a conspiracy, but the police did not care. They began to escort him to Mangrove Police Station without further explanation. The first time Mark entered the police station, he felt the difference of this place. Although the police station looked normal, the atmosphere inside was heavy and somewhat strange. Mark was taken to a small room, where he waited, not knowing what to expect. Officers Harris and Beckett, after putting Mark in the cell, immediately left, leaving him alone in the eerie silence. Although he was wrongly arrested, Mark did not panic. He knew that this was not a normal situation. He knew that he needed to take action and could not rely on the police here. This feeling of insecurity immediately reminded Mark of his brother, David Davis, the Attorney General of the United States. David was a powerful and influential person in the judiciary, and Mark knew that if anyone could help him out of this situation, it would be David. Mark quickly used the phone to call David, hoping that his brother would help. David received the call and immediately realized that the situation was not simple. As Attorney General, David understood that the investigation in Mangrove Township could involve a vast network of corruption within the justice system. David immediately calls in the FBI and other federal agencies to investigate. Meanwhile, Mark remains in custody at the police station, where he quickly learns that this is more than just a false arrest. The legal system in Mangrove seems to be rigged in favor of the corrupt people behind the private prisons. The police officers and judges here not only arrest innocent people, but also profit from the prisons by creating fake cases. Innocent people are forced to confess and sold into private prisons, where they are held in harsh conditions. Mark realizes that he has fallen into a system of massive corruption, one that he cannot escape through the law in Mangrove. However, he also realizes that with the help of his brother, David, things can change. After receiving the call from Mark, David Duong could not sit still. As the Attorney General of the United States, he knew that he could mobilize federal forces to solve the case. The investigation quickly expanded beyond Mangrove. The FBI began searching for evidence and linked police officers, judges, and prosecutors to this corrupt system. David and Mark quickly realized that Mark's case was not a random incident, but part of a larger scheme to profit from the conviction and imprisonment of innocent people. The police officers at Mangrove, including Harris and Beckett, were involved in creating fake criminal records, coercing victims to confess to crimes to supply prisons. With the help of the FBI, David began to expose the conspiracies behind these cases. Things get more complicated when they discover that a powerful group called the Board is behind all this corruption. The Board is made up of high-ranking officials, from judges, prosecutors, to influential politicians, all of whom have ties to private prisons. Their goal is to maintain power and profit from the incarceration of innocent people. The system is being exploited to generate profits for those behind it. David and the FBI team continued their investigation, expanding to other towns and discovering that this corrupt system was not limited to Mangrove. Officials within the system had created a vast network where arrests, trials, and incarcerations were all aimed at generating profits from private prisons. The FBI investigation yielded shocking findings. Although the police officers in Mangrove had been arrested and questioned, the case seemed to have only just begun. After arresting several police officers and judges, the FBI discovered that these corrupt individuals were not simply acting as local police officers, but were being directed by powerful people in the judiciary and politics. David and Mark continued their investigation, tracking down the board, the powerful group behind this network of corruption. By approaching officials in the system and gathering more evidence, the FBI discovered that the board was not only made up of corrupt police officers and judges, but also people with close ties to private prisons, who were behind the incarceration system and profited from wrongful arrests. However, the leaders of the board were not easily exposed. They quickly realized that the FBI investigation was getting closer and closer to the truth and began to take actions to cover their tracks. Some on the board began destroying evidence, deleting documents related to fake cases, and even planning to damage FBI electronic devices to prevent information gathering. However, David could not let these corrupt people get away with it. He decided to expand his investigation beyond Mangrove to other areas where the corruption network had spread. With the help of the FBI and other federal agencies, David began tracking the movements of members of the board, including their secret flights and secret meetings. Mark, despite being saved from wrongful imprisonment, became an important part of this investigation. He began to cooperate closely with the FBI, providing valuable information about the meetings he witnessed while incarcerated at the Mangrove Police Station. These details helped the FBI shed more light on the money and power exchanges between police officers and private prisons. With the help of their FBI teammates, David and Mark followed the trail and discovered that the wrongful arrests and illegal detentions at Mangrove are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger strategy in which private prisons are filled with innocent people and money is siphoned off from government contracts. As the investigation intensified, the FBI discovered that the people behind the board had a plan in place. Officials in the board began doing everything they could to thwart the FBI's investigation. They began launching cyber attacks on FBI servers, attempting to wipe out any evidence the agency had collected. David and the FBI team could not let this happen. They had prepared special security measures to counter cyber attacks. Investigators also increased their strategy meetings to plan how to approach high-ranking officials in the board and expose any plots they had carried out. One of the key turning points in the investigation was when the FBI discovered unusual financial transactions between corrupt officials and private prisons. These documents revealed that the prisons were not only holding innocent people, but were also enriching the big investors behind the prisons. Although the board did everything they could to hide the truth, the FBI investigation continued. David, Mark, and the FBI team gathered enough evidence to bring these corrupt people to light. They began to gather information about high-ranking government officials who aided and protected the board. The FBI investigation finally reached its goal. They gathered enough evidence to bring the board to justice. Corrupt officials in the justice system were arrested and faced serious charges, ranging from corruption, organized crime to murder. Documents, phone calls, and financial transactions became solid evidence to prove the existence of this corrupt network. Mark Davis, who was wrongly arrested but eventually became a key part of the investigation, felt he had accomplished a great mission. Together with David, he saw a system of justice restored, although the fight was not easy. David, with the help of the FBI, helped to bring down a huge corrupt empire, and those behind it paid the price for their actions. Meanwhile, private prisons, which have been exposed as part of a network of corruption, have faced investigations and public outcry. Those wrongfully imprisoned in these prisons, thanks to the help of the FBI, have been released, and the fight against corruption has achieved a major victory. Mark and David know that although this victory is a great step forward, the fight to maintain justice is not over. Those behind the board still have great influence in society, and justice must be protected and maintained in the future. The story ends with justice triumphing, but also raises big questions about the justice system and corruption at the highest levels. David and Mark fought not only for themselves, but for justice for all the innocent people who were cheated by the system.